I'm here with Dr. Joel Kahn. How is it going?
I'm punching bag.
You are a busy man. You know that?
Yeah, I had a fun 48 hours in Los Angeles because Rogan was the maraschino cherry on the vegan Sunday because the day before I spent an hour with Larry King doing an interview on longevity, the legend, the man, and I was very honored to, meet him and spend time. And then the morning before Rogan, the Rogan team was a little pissed at me. I had an interview with a guy named Bassem Youssef. And if you guys don't follow, BASSEMYOUSSEF, or on Twitter, B Youssef, Happy Youssef. He's a cardiac surgeon from Cairo who in 2010, when the political uprising was going on, said, I'm going to take my phone and be Jon Stewart in Arabic. And he developed 40 million followers very quickly. Big country, nobody does political satire. And that lasted for about 3 years till the government said, you're going to jail because you're criticizing us. And he now lives in Los Angeles. He got out of there. But in 2013, he became a plant-based cardiac surgeon when a friend of his had a remarkable health recovery of multiple sclerosis. And he said, it's got to be the real deal. So he is now like this burning fire of teaching plant-based nutrition in the Middle East out of Los Angeles as his base. So I had the honor of recording an hour with him too that'll be part of a movie he's making for the Mideast. I used my best Arabic. I said hummus. Okay, but he has Bassem, who is an incredibly fine man, has 10.5 million Twitter followers. So that kind of like made Rogan look puny. Yeah, Rogan was, like I say, that was like no big deal. Maraschino cherry after the whole Sunday in the morning. But yeah. It was good. It was good. Chris Kresser has some good attributes, and I didn't want to be the angry, pissed off, typical. In fact, Bassem Youssef's opening line in stand-up comedy is, I'm Arab, I'm vegan, I'm dangerous, and I'm annoying. Didn't want to be too annoying. I mean, I could have been much angrier and much more contentious, but then I would have had the data wrong, and they would have hated me. Now it's just they're all devolving into I abuse the scientific data.
I mean, if it was me on the show, I probably would have lost it, to be honest with you. So it's probably a good thing that you're on it rather than me. But I think like everybody, you, Joe, Chris, like all you guys were really respectful. Kept the conversation flowing. I thought it was a really good discussion as a listener. And really enjoyed it. I didn't think anybody was attacking anyone.
Yeah, the odds that the show sponsored by Butcher Box.
I saw that.
A fresh meat box that shows up at your home, that show was going to conclude, yes, veganism and whole food plant-based diets are the answer to the health problem. It wasn't a situation that was likely going to go. So if we left most of them not pissed off, a couple eat a few more green vegetables, and a few of them hopefully had sex during the show and did something better than trying to figure out what we were doing. And if you did, you direct message me if it was good. I want to know the whole story.
Definitely.
2 hours and 47 minutes of sex during Rogan. It's something can hold.
I know, right? That was a long episode. It's got to be one of his longest.
I would have kept going, except my bladder was getting pretty full. It's actually kind of funny. It's a nice setup he has in Woodland Hills.
Oh,
it's
sure.
a warehouse, but once you walk in, it's a really great gym, and he's got stuffed dead animals everywhere. It's very inspiring. By reputation, he starts every morning with a big green kale smoothie, and he said on the show he eats vegetables every meal every day. He's smart enough to know that's going to tend to keep him alive, overcoming all the other stuff. But there was a green juice, a real nice raw green juice in his refrigerator, and take anything during the show, and I take a sip, and it's just vile. Nobody had touched it for probably a year. It was spoiled. So I had to transition to coffee, and at the end of 3 hours and 47 minutes, I was ready to give my French press back.
No, I don't blame you. And one thing, kudos to him for having you on. I mean, the guy's a hunter. He had no business of bringing on a vegan, and I thought it was surprising at one end that he even hosted this discussion. I thought it was really cool. How is Joe in person, by the way? It seems like a cool guy.
Powerful, short. I didn't quite know. Nothing wrong with being short. I just didn't know if he was going to be, a massive 6'4" kind of guy. But I'd say, and he had a bad morning. We started at 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. He had a orthopedic procedure on his knee and was in a bit of pain, and was a bit challenged, I think, by that. Although he overcame it. But at the end of the day, one, we're in a society where entertainment, rules, and he's certainly an entertainer. He's a comedian and a performer. He wasn't very funny yesterday too. He's a guy who's married. He's got kids. I mean, he's got a kind heart. I didn't sense any direct animosity. I left, with a hug and a good feeling about him and his team. We all got our viewpoints. We all got our biases. We all got our conflicts, and he's no more perfect than the rest of us. But I give him credit for bringing it on. I don't know how much heat his real hardcore following will give. I think they're probably celebrating that it went just the way they thought. I don't know. I don't care. I really just hoped. I was concerned, a bit nervous. I did spend a lot of time preparing, but I have a real practice. I have 3 restaurants. I mean, I couldn't stop my life for 3 weeks and get a PhD in fatology. I mean, I read a tremendous amount. But, and it's actually amazing. You think you know a lot, and you keep reading and reading and reading and reading.
Right.
Unlimited. Where was I going that? But, my big concern was, just like I was going to just break down and eat a big steak with him, on stage.
Right.
It's really, I walked in the lines, then I walked out. I wasn't bleeding. The post-game analysis is still ongoing vigorously all over social media. I'm not reading all the comments. People tell me the comments on YouTube underneath the 450,000 views so far, I don't even know, that they're largely positive towards my presence on the show. I have no way to actually analyze that. I don't have the time to read it. I just like the one that said, I have to share one. It said, it's really odd because like the vegan looks kind of healthy with good skin and he's glowing. And Kresser looks like he's the scrawny little vegan that will be eating asparagus.
That's pretty funny.
I do.
I left a comment on there, and I think it became one of like the top ranking comments on there. And all I said was like, hey, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for having it. As a vegan, I thought it was really, helpful. Like something along the lines of that. And the amount of hate I got for even writing that I was vegan is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But anyway, I kind of try to stay out of the comments section.
Only sector of the food market that you can be in and not be hated by somebody is if you're an ice cubitarian. Because, the gluten-free people love you, the sugar people love you, the plant people love you, you're not killing animals, and the whole thing. So we should start that up, nutrient-enriched ice cubes.
Let me ask you, you've been on Joe Rogan's podcast, you've been on CNN with Larry King, even Dr. Oz, you were recently on there. What do you feel like you've kind of gotten out of this little tour and like being all these different, platforms? Like, what do you feel like you've really gotten out of these experiences?
The chicks are calling, man. The chicks are calling. That's what matters.
That's what it's all about.
All right there. 37 years. I thought
there
that was.
Go.
We just had a check. 37 years I've had that thing. What did I get out of it? The difference, I love my patient practice of plant-based cardiology, one-on-one, really, really meaningful and intense. And people come to me because they're interested in change. But the ability, between King and Oz and Bossum when it comes out in this, it might reach 25 million people. And, just say the word disease reversal. We only spent maybe 10 minutes towards the end of the show on I didn't even mention Dr. Ornish, Dr. Esselstyn. Those guys wouldn't even know what that was. But that disease reversal happens with plant-based diets. That's a powerful statement. And maybe, I don't care if 3 people out of 25 million heard that and are actually going to now go to Google or a book and, discover they have a path. That's fine with me. But it's the reach, it's the power, limited, by need to do clickbait, little sound bites and all the rest. It is really, particularly, and actually I like Dr. Oz. I think he's a brilliant man. I think he gets a lot of unfair press. I'm not saying he's done it all right, but that show is sound bites. 5 minutes, you're on, you're off. Opposite is Rogan, where you're going deep, but they're totally different situations.
Let me ask you, a common topic or a main topic on the podcast was epidemiology, and
I'll tell you what, the only thing that drove me crazy, and I don't know why Joe didn't shut him down, healthy user biases. Let me tell you about it. Healthy user bias. We've heard that term 20 times. It's a term nobody talks about generally other than Kresser. It comes up now and then. So healthy user bias is the idea when a study reports that plant-based eaters have this health outcome. How do you know it's that? How do you know it's not that they ride bicycles and they sleep and they don't smoke? Although it's called multivariate analysis. You get a whole lot of data points and you try and equalize it. But it turns out the study he brought up over and over, the health food store study 1996, I just posted it on Twitter at Dr. J. Kahn, DRJKHN. I had known this before, there just wasn't time. The authors have a section at the end of the paper about number one, the paper is not about vegans. It does include the word vegetarians. It actually is a very the conclusion of the paper is eating fruit will reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease. That's not very controversial. That is actually the conclusion. But it says in the end of the paper, we were very limited in the data we had to collect from subjects. We didn't know if they smoked. We didn't know about their alcohol intake. We didn't know this. We didn't know that. They were very honest about it, but yet it was one of his rocks. Second one of his rocks was Zoe Harcum, Dr. Harcum, Dr. Harcum. And, go try and listen to a podcast by Zoe Harcum. She's a cute, delightful, wonderful English scientist. I cannot understand her Cockney accent, and I doubt she's going to hear this and hate me more than she hates me already. But she's published 14 papers in the medical literature. One or two are actually letters to the editor, so take those out, down to 12. About 5 of them are the exact same paper published in different journals. That's actually called churning. I mean, I've written over 100 scientific papers. Anybody can look it up. They're there. I mean, it's not the same paper in 10 different journals. She studied the USDA food guidelines 1977 to 1983. Talk about old data, Joe Rogan. That's when she was studying. She didn't study the most recent USDA guidelines we're talking about. But how many times did he say it? Man, unless you know the field, you're not going to know who Zoe Harcum is. I have ripped her in a whole bunch of blogs, so she's no gracious fan of my presence. But, she's a factor there, but she's a factor, in my opinion, distorting and twisting and buttering up the data, the way she wants it. And what was the last thing we heard about? I mean, healthy user bias, Zoe this Dr. Ioannidis. She's a well-known statistician at Stanford, one of 100 well-known statisticians around the United States. And he's sort of a free thinker, and he wrote this paper recently that there's problems with the nature of nutrition research. Now, he can't solve it. He doesn't have, there's brighter people than him that know. The ideal study is going to be 50,000 people that eat this way and that way and this way, and we follow them, we lock them in a room so they can't cheat and get potato chips on the all-plant diet or something. We all know there's problems. But to say you toss out, number one, that all epidemiology is good, all epidemiology is bad. What I said 10 times, and I was annoying, is there are 4 pillars of scientific evaluation. They're used by really brilliant people like Dr. Walter Longo: basic science, biochemistry, epidemiology, randomized studies, and centenarian studies. It is a little shocking that Joe Rogan had never heard of the blue zones. I had a few goals. I knew he didn't know about the blue zone. He had no idea that Loma Linda was an hour east of where he was sitting and has tremendously different life statistics, let alone Okinawa. And did he hear me say that 3% of the calories in Okinawa come from animal products and 97% come from plants, and their longevity is legendary till KFC showed up. But I didn't know about that. That was one of my goals, was to talk about the blue zones, was to talk about actually Finland versus Crete, animal versus plant, fats, animal versus plant protein. It's pretty heady stuff, but Dr. Morgan Levine at Harvard, epic study, 300 to 400% increase in cancer with animal protein, not plant protein. The more updated study that mortality is favorable with plant protein, mortality is adverse, and we know why, IGF-1 and mTOR. And I know how many people actually grabbed on to this, but this is actually the highest quality science. This is Nobel Prize nominated science. And what Kresser was dragging up was 1996 studies that the authors had to recognize how horribly limited. Now, I will say he kept mentioning 3 new epidemiologic studies I did miss, and I'll say it to the world. He wrote a blog a day before. Actually, I think he published the blog the day of our interview. It was. I just saw it, a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had done nothing but surf the web on the 27th, I would have seen that he was talking about this 45 and under study in Australia. I have no idea what it is. I do need to go back and read it. Other people are going to dissect his comments. My greatest fun so far has been, I just happened to see, everybody's got an opinion, but there's a pretty big paleo leader named Rob Wolf.
Oh, yeah.
No degree, no nothing, but he's written books, and people love Rob Wolf. So he has a bromance with me. I've never met the man, but he posted more pictures of me on Instagram and Twitter. I didn't know this about an hour ago. I mean, every time I said something, he took a snapshot, my face, the quote, blah, 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 blah. So I just called him out on that. I said, dude, let's go out or let's have drinks. I mean, you got such a crush on me. And I don't mind jumping on his page and just saying, no, you're actually wrong. The USDA guidelines say absolutely, and I put the quote on Instagram and Twitter just an hour ago, as little cholesterol as possible in the diet is a recommendation. They didn't say 100 milligrams, 200 milligrams, 300 milligrams. They did take that number away. As little as possible, that's less than 300. I mean, that's not an egg. If you're a plant eater, we're the ones that are actually meeting those guidelines. So anyway, that was just some of the fresh wounds and scars. I am actually both caring. I have a bodyguard. I'm a little concerned until this cools down for a week or two.
Well, hey, I seriously though, I could not believe that Joe didn't know Loma Linda was like close to him. I mean, the Blue Zones is such an amazing, research. I mean, I've interviewed Dan Buettner. The episode should be coming out in a few weeks, but it's amazing research. I mean, you look at these parts of the world, and they're eating a majority of plant-based diet. They're exercising, they're doing other healthy things, but it's not like the little itsy bitsy teeny bit of meat or fish that they're having that they're living to 100 plus years. It's the things that they're doing the most, eating plant-based diet.
And what I chose not to do is, as I walked in the room, Rogan said to me, you heard that Charles Poliquin died. So I heard the name. He's a fitness guru and very much a paleo diet proponent. He died a couple days ago, and I missed it in the news. At age 57, this ripped up guy, always posting in Testosterone magazine. That's true. I don't make it up. Now, I don't know what he died of. The likelihood is he had a heart attack. That's always number one. But it could have been a blood clot from a plane trip. You don't know. It's not appropriate for the family and that audience to say, look at, but my real concern, and it was my concern going in and out, if, just a couple of those people recognize that heart disease is a risk, that even this crazy-ass carnivore orthopedic surgeon, Sean Baker, which we talked about towards the end, at least he had his heart scanned to have the knowledge that this insane diet he's eating, at least he's starting at low risk. He may not end up at low risk. He's starting at low risk. But, unfortunately, Charles Poliquin could have been potentially identified and treated. So that's one of my platforms. We didn't really get there just by the nature of the show and the dynamics.
But that Sean Baker guy, he eats like 100% carnivore diet, right? Like all meat. Yeah.
I'm on his podcast, October 25th. That might hit my buddy. I have the weirdest Twitter. Everybody knows it. I'm old, man. That you can message people on Twitter. You can find people. So here, it's actually right here. Within about 60 minutes, I got a private message from Rogan, Sean Baker, and Gary Taubes. Gary Taubes and I, he's got a bromance too. We're sitting down, we're having coffee in a couple weeks.
No way. That's
like, geez, dude. Are you warming up to the idea that you need a prescription for a little Cialis? What's going on?
That's interesting. All these people are reaching out to you. I mean, these are big names. They're no joke.
Yeah, Gary. Nobody's bigger than Gary Taubes. In terms of 20 years of influence on this field and shifting fat is good for you so strongly. He actually published a paper about 2 months ago. It was actually, I think, a paradigm kind of moment with Walter Willett, the longtime head of the Department of Public Health at Harvard School of Public Health. Walter Willett, a University of Michigan trained physician, and he's written over 1,000 papers. The paleo meat group call him this, pro-vegan scientist. He's a scientist. His book, which is called Eat Well and Live or something, it's a very Mediterranean diet book with fish, and it hardly would be characterized unless I'd missed some dietary change. But the fact that Gary Taubes published a paper with Walter Willett, with this guy, Ronald Krauss, MD, who I talked about towards the beginning of the show, there's not a dairy industry conspiracy. It's a dairy industry fact published in Nutrition Action. I put it on Twitter in the last 2-3 hours. It's their meeting notes they published. Can you imagine? The dairy industry sits down and says, we need to find researchers to push some money to start doing favorable research and lectures and all the rest. And, a year later comes out this paper in 2010, Dr. Ronald Krauss, about saturated fat isn't correlated with cardiovascular disease. I mean, the timing is not coincidental. It's very purposeful. It's not conspiracy. It's published notes in the meeting. Joe wasn't happy with that. Maybe he's got a dairy sponsor too. I don't know. Milk Box or something. But now Ronald Krauss is writing papers with Walter Willett, saying Dr. Ansel Keys isn't an evil guy, saying coconut oil probably should be avoided till we learn more about saturated fat, and we can say that. The fact, and what didn't happen last night, I was kind of coach on topic. It's really subtle. But, it started out with cholesterol in the serum cholesterol. Blood cholesterol is related to coronary heart disease, fat. Then we got LDL cholesterol, actually all the way back in 1955. We learned real quickly LDL cholesterol was better correlated than just total cholesterol with coronary heart disease. Then about 15, 18 years ago, we got these fancy tests, LDL particle size, LDL particle number. And people like Dr. Ronald Krauss, who actually holds a patent on that scientific breakthrough, have been confusing the public. Well, you eat butter, but it raises the good fluffy LDL that aren't harmful, and it doesn't raise the small dense LDL that are harmful. So really, in reality, it's not harmful. In reality, every particle that has LDL is atherogenic and can cause your arteries to clot. Ronald Krauss has published 2 papers in the last 5 years that absolutely say what he used to not say. He's turned around. So it's a real subtle little point. Turns out Chris Kresser doesn't believe that old nonsense either. I had read some of his blogs, and he's actually on topic on that the particle size cholesterol confusion argument is not scientifically valid. So I didn't need to go there because it wasn't something he was going to bring up and hang his hat on. So a little technical there.
Let me ask you a question. I think it's an important one. I mean, there's the movement into the paleo diet, the ketogenic diet, whatever you want to call it. I think Chris termed a word Nutra something. It was like
Nutrahor.
Yes,
the Nutrahor diet.
Right, and whatever you want to call it. Like, there's so many people claiming that there's benefits. There's studies coming out saying that it helps. How would you explain that? Like, as an experienced cardiologist.
So, again, with all respect to my friend Chris Kresser, we would be talking about saturated fat, and he'd be quoting low-carb data, which isn't necessarily saturated fat. And I had to call him out on that. I don't think people got what I was saying. I mean, he just answered with 5 different topics, but there really was just one question, and you could have stayed on topic. We never got to discuss low-carb, ketogenic diets. It's a different topic. It may have implications for what happens to your blood cholesterol and saturated fat content in the diet. I will say, everybody listen, Chris Kresser says on his podcast and interviews, when he goes from his standard Nutrahor diet, I won't say that, but anyway, his street food is Nutrahor, to when he will do a ketogenic diet, a very high-fat, low-carb diet for a week or two, his LDL doubles, and he gets nervous. So he doesn't do it any longer, and he goes back to his standard diet. Well, he obviously cares a bit about what his cholesterol is. He's not so confident that jacking saturated fat up his diet has no consequence.
So he's put up his LDL cholesterol.
It was a comment he made. I'm not sure where it was interviewed. It may have been on Rogan, actually, because he's been on Rogan twice before. That it's called your LDL particle number went from 1,100 to over 2,000. He got concerned, so he doesn't do it long term. And you shouldn't do a ketogenic diet long term. If you're going to do it for 4 or 5 days, which is something Dr. Longo at University of Southern California has studied and has changed the scientific world. But we didn't get there partly because today Rogan had a guy named Dom D'Agostino on, who is the ketogenic, animal food guru of the paleo movement. So he didn't really need to spend some time there, and that's why he didn't chase it. He told me that after. He goes, look at my listeners, it's probably 1176. It's probably up already. Or maybe they're still recording it right now. Who knows?
And you're actually a promoter. Well, I know. Okay, so you eat a low carb vegan diet. Is that correct?
I eat the same. I mean, I've been doing this for over 40 years. It's largely, I eat exclusively plant foods. I don't call it plant-based. I am 100% plant foods, whole. I have maybe an Impossible Burger every 3 months, but I don't even.
But you eat like starches and fruits, right?
Very starchivore, McDougall.
Yeah.
I don't really, I don't care what it is, salad bar, beans, potatoes. This professor at University of Southern California, Dr. Longo, developed a 5-day, it's not a diet for weight loss, it's a diet for total body regeneration. That sounds woo-woo, but he's also been nominated for the Nobel Prize in Medicine, so this is really, really at the top of the scientific pier. But it's 5 days of plant foods, 800 calories a day, and you become ketotic at the end of the 5 days. They're very low in carbs, particularly added sugar, very low in protein.
And calories too.
And calories too. So I do my test strips, which you can buy at a drugstore, for your urine, and I develop ketones, like they say. You do end up losing a little bit of weight, but if you do your blood markers, biomarkers, as Chris was talking about, you'll see if you need, blood pressure goes down, blood sugar goes down, C-reactive protein inflammation goes down. And unique is stem cells get released in your blood, though you can't, as a single person, actually do a blood test to confirm it. It's been done in scientific study. So parts of your body that used to hurt stop hurting. It's phenomenal. So that's one aspect of the low-carb, keto, plant-based movement, that there's actually the world's best science for any kind of keto diet is a plant-based keto diet. And only 5 days, and you go back to your healthy sweet potato diet. There is another movement out there that's nowhere near as scientific, which is we're doing ketogenic diets. We're using plants long term. Every day we're putting all kinds of avocados and olive oil and avocado oil and everything on our big green leafies. Some people are claiming that their weight is good, they feel good, their diabetic control is good, they're diabetic and all, and it's certainly likely to be safer because it's plant proteins and plant fats, not animal protein, animal fats. But I still, if somebody's going to do that, like there's a Facebook users group called Vegan Ketosis. There's a number of them. They have tens of thousands of people in these user groups. But you really should be checking your labs or doing under medical supervision if you've got medical problems.
I feel like you could go either way with the low carb vegan diet. Like you can eat a ton of vegetables and still keep it low fat, or you could add a lot of fat, like you said, avocados and olives, and do the opposite.
So we have less concern, I believe the literature says. There's a study came out earlier in 2018, monounsaturated fat, which exists. If you have a big steak, a big piece of pork, Chris Kresser said this, there isn't just saturated fat. There's monounsaturated fat, there's polyunsaturated fat inside those meat substances. So there's meat-sourced monounsaturated fat, we call MUFAs, omega-9. And there's certainly, we think of olive oil as the typical plant-based source. There's not much or any omega-3 in olive oil. There's omega-9 plus some saturated fat. But the study that came out, Harvard School of Public Health, big study, plant-based monounsaturated fat promoted healthy outcomes. Animal-based monounsaturated fat promoted disease outcomes. It's just another example. So if a person, doesn't have a weight concern or, wants to try vegan ketosis, a plant-based olive oil, which I wouldn't ever tell one of my Esselstyn type patients I have in my practice with, active angina trying to reverse. That's not where they need to go. But for just somebody wanting to try something different with their plant-based diet, it's interesting.
Right. Yeah.
I did it for a week. I didn't really like it. I mean, my plate was just like greasy, oily. It's just not. I'm not used to that.
No, me personally, I'm more for like a McDougall, like starch, whole food, plant-based diet. But you said you wouldn't recommend it necessarily to your heart disease patients, but maybe somebody who wants to try it for weight loss or something like. Okay. Yeah, got it.
But I still recommend they go and use Dr. Longo's Prolon box. In fact, it's very cool stuff. I brought Rogan, it's a box from University of Southern California with the food you eat for 5 days. I gave one to Rogan as a gift. He had had stem cell therapy in his knee that morning. And there's some very cool data if you do this plant-based ketotic 5-day program, right in conjunction with getting stem cell therapy, obviously really cutting edge stuff. You may actually get a greater benefit because you've primed your body to use those stem cells more efficiently. I mean, we're talking crazy futuristic stuff. It's happening right now. It's happening with vegan foods.
Right, that'd be cool if he tries it and gives us like an update or something. And then I guess my last question is you're a promoter of fasting, correct? Like you're an advocate of fasting?
Well, two aspects. There's something called officially time-restricted feeding, meaning usually from about 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. to 9 a.m., 8 p.m. to 10 a.m., 12 to 14 hours, I'm not eating. I have black coffee. Okay. I'm not eating. I've kind of built that in as a habit. I'll work out, go to the office, and I might not eat till lunch. I try not to make it 18 hours. There's a little hint of data that that's more than you need to, but every day, time-restricted feeding may allow your body more regeneration, more rejuvenation. And not every vegan's healthy. I mean, that's why I'm looking for what can we do to use the best science and the best plants. And, if they overlap, that's great. They're going to be additive. Then there's actual fasting. And, water fasting is out there, but it's a challenge. And you're not going to sell the public on water fasting. I mean, except for my Jewish holiday, Yom Kippur, and a couple other, examples. But this 5-day program that Dr. Longo has created, which is fortunately plant-based, is a way to drop your calories to 800, low sugar, low protein, high complex carb, and plant fats. And you will probably see benefit in terms of weight loss and some other parameters. I'm not selling it to anybody. It's called Prolon, Prolon. I've written many blogs about it. But the science is radical. Animals are growing brain tissue, are regrowing nerve tissue in multiple sclerosis. There's actually type 1 diabetic rats are regrowing beta cells in their pancreas and are no longer type 1 diabetic. Not human data. Human data is biomarkers, stem cells. Chemotherapy patients feel better when they do this during their chemo. They may be getting a better result. That's a complex answer, but there's even some data. That's what I mentioned on the show last night. It used to be 20 days was the data, what it could do to your microbiome to make it healthier with a plant-based diet. Now we have data from this program, 5 days, and your bacterial content in your colon radically changed for the better by eating plant-based foods. It's like, whoa. You're not going to see that with meat.
And what you're doing is just intermittent fasting, right? Like 12 to 14 hours, and you eat a meal.
I'm just going to bring up to date that the professors of the world wouldn't call the 12 to 14 hours intermittent fasting, because that's actually they don't use the word of fasting until you've depleted the glycogen out of your liver and muscles, and that takes about 2 to 3 days. So when you do the 800 calorie diet, you'll deplete your glycogen. If you do water fasting, you deplete your glycogen. So time restricted feeding is the technical word for the 12 to 14 hour daily habit.
And you can incorporate that while you're sleeping?
Yeah, sure. That's when I do it. Right. Yeah.
Right. And then I want to close this off by saying, there's a lot of back and forth, I guess, in the Joe Rogan podcast. And you can't help it. I mean, it's a debate. But one thing you can't argue, which I think your background is in heart disease. I personally have not seen any data saying that a meat-based diet will reverse heart disease.
Right. Except Chris Kresser. Chris Kresser at the end said, well, just because I don't have data doesn't mean my diet doesn't do that. So God forbid his parents develop the most common affliction in the United States that can kill you, coronary heart disease, and he puts his parents on that diet. I would say he should probably send them to my clinic, and I'll get them going on their, whole food, plant-based, naturally low in fats and added sugar, diet modeled after Dr. Ornish and Dr. Esselstyn, which is, what I teach, what I use, and I see remarkable reversal of disease in my own preventive cardiology clinic in Detroit. There's no data that any animal product has resulted in reversal of atherosclerosis. It's the greatest victory that we have as a medical movement of plant-based medicine.
Right, because
right below cannabis in the effect it had. No, that's a good plant-based
That's a
therapy.
talk for Elon Musk, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. I'm
But
sitting in his chair. I know.
I know that's incredible. That's got to be an awesome honor. But yeah, I mean, like you can't really refute the data with heart disease. And what he was saying is that um, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Like I think that's a cool quote. But what are you going to do? You're going to sit around until the data comes out saying a meat-based diet will maybe one day reverse heart disease when we right
Right.
now have the data saying plant-based diet reverses heart disease when it's our number one killer right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I think that's I don't want to say irresponsible because I'm
No,
sure he's a good person, but
it's irresponsible and it's almost delusional that you can be so tied up in your movement not to step back and recognize it. And the talk I give all the time is the miracle of heart disease reversal, because it is. I mean, I feel it's amazing, and that's why I so enjoy my medical practice, because I actually am leading that and doing it and seeing results. And there's just nothing. I mean, it's frankly, it's a narcotic to actually tell patients how much their atherosclerosis has improved because we worked together for 6 months. And I document it. It's not guessing. So it's powerful stuff, and we can be very proud of it. That whole segment on supplements, and I thought it was even going to go longer. Nutrient deficiency supplements, and the reason I didn't go deep is they're all. I mean, I showed two solutions that literally take 10 seconds a day, and you may not do it the same way. I mean, I don't mind taking a plant-based multivitamin that is designed to take a Chris Kresser, blog and say boom, 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 boom. We put them on the capsule, done. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, it's inexpensive, it's safe.
low risk.
I do it every other day, and then there's that cool little spray I didn't come up with, but that's just another route, and then many other routes. But
Right.
we are doing an experiment with completely plant-based nutrition, because it's not like there's a long period that we can point to and prove it. But recognizing that, I think we are going to enjoy continued benefits. And I made the case. I mean, Rogan didn't hear me. Fish is not a healthy food in 2018. My patients have toxic mercury levels. These are wealthy people living in great houses and great restaurants and great country clubs, and their mercury levels are, incredibly dangerous. And I show them, and you got to take 3-4 weeks no fish, and we're going to pound some chlorella and some cilantro and infrared sauna and get this stuff out, and repeat a blood test. And I mean, I don't want to say it, but this is, what am I going to eat? Well, tempeh, seitan, beans,
Exactly.
free source, yeah.
And the other thing you guys didn't get a chance to cover, it seemed like it was a very health focused debate. But the other thing is that you cannot argue that this diet is more ethical for the animals. It's much better for the planet, the environment. And I think once you look at the bigger picture, including the many health benefits that you mentioned on the show, I mean, it just all makes sense.
Yeah,
At the end
we
of the
were
day.
told specifically the conversation wasn't going to go to ethics or environment. Whether he's going to do that in the future, I think if he does, he'll wait a few months. He's kind of had John Joseph was on 5 weeks ago that was talking his whole plant-based diet, and he's got to give his listeners a break, or they're going to accuse him of having some green tendencies. So, yeah, I suggested to him Gene Bauer from Farm Sanctuary as somebody that could, easily handle the environmental impact. And
Right. He would be good.
I'll just get my buddy Gary Urofsky to go on Rogan. Can you imagine if Urofsky went on Rogan? If you guys don't know Gary Urofsky, go to a website called
Is it Adopt or Adapt?
Adapt, ADAPTT.org. It's one of the hidden gems of plant-based and particularly ethical plant-based knowledge, but it's actually to nutrition and nutrients and all the rest. So a great friend from suburban Detroit who's changed the world by his activism.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. I was just gonna say, I'm pretty sure he's in Michigan, right?
No, he lives
from-
a mile.
yeah.
He lives a mile from my restaurant. He's
Wow.
a frequent and honored guest. I'm not worthy. No, he's one of those people that actually literally sacrificed years of his life. Could have almost sacrificed his life. He spent weeks in jail for letting animals out of factories so that they wouldn't be killed. And he's kind of retired from that level of activism. And somebody in LA, if you don't follow Jane Velez Mitchell on Facebook, please do. Jane Velez Mitchell professional page, almost 1 million people, but plant-based, but really mainly animal activism. Wonderful human being.
Right. And you mentioned your restaurant. Definitely drop us your restaurant. What's it called? Where can people find it in case they find themselves in Michigan?
Yeah, so I own 3. I'm very proud to say it's. That's why I just came from Green Space Cafe in Ferndale, Michigan, and Royal Oak, Michigan. These are suburbs of Detroit. One's a large, full-service, full-bar restaurant, totally plant-based. Many no-oil options to honor Dr. Esselstyn. Totally non-GMO. We have a smaller one called Green Space and Go that's completely organic, little small, funky, 20-minute place to get amazing food. It's so proud of it. Then we have a food truck in Austin, Texas called ATX Food Co. By the Barton Pool, Barton Springs, that many people know. So I'll be there in a couple weeks for Austin City Limits, trying to get Paul McCartney. If you watch this interview, Paul McCartney, come to our food truck because you're the headliner and you're plant-based. Yeah.
I'd be honored if you watch this, to be honest with you.
Hey, Paul, what you want today, sir?
Drop us your website, too. Where can people find out more about you, the work that you're involved in?
Yeah, it's drjoelkahn.com, DRJOEL. And actually, the reason that's really cool, I'll tell you, I'll just write it out for you. And though I am a doctor, I actually can write and people can read it. drjoelkahn.com. Yeah, you can see that.
Yep.
I should do this more often. But I have a button called Rogan References, which truly is an epic accumulation of information that people can dive into. But you need a time. Do you know what plantpositive.com is?
I've heard of it.
Well, it's the first reference if you go to my website in the Rogan button. But it was an unknown person from 2010 to 2014, created about 100 YouTubes. The most scientific analysis of what I did with Chris Kresser last night. What did Gary Taubes write line by line by line? What did Rob, I'm blanking on his first name right now, do Rob Wolf, rather, line by line by line. Just any access to old medical literature, although we were told last night old medical literature is irrelevant. Forget your grandparents, everything that ever happened before is irrelevant. I thought Castaneda said, if we don't remember history, we're doomed to repeat it. It's an amazing series to spend some time learning about what's called cholesterol confusion, which is exactly what we were talking about last time.
Well, yeah, I'll have all that in the show notes so people can go and check out those references and to Dr. Joel Kahn's website. Yeah, huge honor. I was so happy to see you go on there. It was a pleasure listening to you, and I can't tell you what an honor it is to have you on the show.
And I appreciate it. I mean, Dr. McGregor could have done an amazing job. Dr. Garth Davis could do an amazing job, but I think he would have walked off because he has a fire in his belly that I don't know if he could have tolerated.
I saw him on the doctors, and he wasn't too happy.
I know. And this is like, I've been on the doctor show, and that's like 7 minutes, and this is obviously hours and hours. It takes, and actually I like Chris Kresser, so I mean, I wasn't there to bring him down as a human being. I just want to bring the confusion down.